In the last decade, the global refugee crisis has almost doubled, and by the end of 2024, we can already expect up to 130 million of displaced people worldwide. I'm Kuznetsova, one of them, a high-qualified refugee in Switzerland. As a professional in program management and research for international development cooperation, where I worked for the last 14 years, I take a courage to provide policy recommendations for the economic support policies for displaced people worldwide. I would say that we cannot achieve sustainable development until we address this acute problem. And to start, I would like to highlight two important points in the history of development of this support. In 2016, there was a World Humanitarian Summit, and on this summit it was emphasized that humanitarian aid should be better linked to long-term development goals. And there the livelihood support emerged. Then in 2019, OECD released their recommendations on humanitarian-development-peace nexus, and governments started gradually and international organizations implementing economic support policies in a nexus, using nexus approach. And the third important event is actually the end of last year Global Refugee Forum. So the forum that appeared to be the largest multi-stakeholder event in the world, where 168 governments attended. And actually this shows a multi-stakeholder nature and approach to solve this problem. So this is my second point that I would like to emphasize, that governments usually they don't develop those policies in total separation. They need support, and therefore all the examples that I will further give, and these are examples that I think should be replicated because they are these programs which are quietly successfully work in different countries. So they were developed in cooperation and with assistance of international organizations like UNHCR or other UN organizations or the World Food Programme, ICRC, and sometimes these are non-governmental organizations like Oxfam or Mercy Corps. So, and when speaking about the policies themselves, I would like to divide them into two big groups. First group of policies which keep people in their countries with the purpose to keep people in their countries, and the second group is when European or other governments face the problem with the influx of refugees. So let's speak about the first group, policies to support internally displaced people and host communities. First, these are cash transfer programs for immediate relief support, and they were widely used in Syria, in Venezuela, and of course in Ukraine and in other countries. Then the second is livelihood support that I mentioned, so in a more nexus and development approach, and I can give here the real example of Ukraine, where during 2019-2023 I supervised the livelihood assistance programs which were co-financed by Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC, and these programs combined various set of instruments to support conflict-affected people, which included vocational education, grants to various sizes of businesses, and those businesses then created working places, then community-based initiatives, work with employment centers, legal support, advocacy support, and all that together stimulated people, gave them the hope to develop locally. Then the third policy, the important one, is housing support. So people need subsidies, people need lower interest rates to settle in the new communities. And in Colombia, there is a quite successful example where there are not only various kinds of subsidies and low interest rates for housing, but also the possibility for IDPs to reclaim the land that they lost due to the displacement. And the fourth important policy are community development funds. So these are funds really to rebuild the infrastructure or to build the new infrastructure like schools, hospitals, etc. I would give here a good example of Iraq's resource centers. And these centers, they provide both the long-term support and short-term support. Then let's speak about the second group policies for coping with the influxes of refugees. And here I would like to underline that everything starts, of course, with asylum application and integration support. So that should be streamlined, including language classes, employment services, and housing support. And a good example here is in Germany, where since 2015 there are these welcome centers successfully working. Then the second step is ensuring access to education and vocational training for refugees of all ages. I don't see a major problem here. I think governments are coping quite well with this particular policy. As a refugee in Switzerland and also talking to other Ukrainian refugees in other countries, I see that if you are proactive, if you take your destiny in your own hands, then you can access various kinds of educational programs, also universities, coaching, mentoring. I myself got a discount on my diplomatic executive studies in Geneva Graduate Institute. Also, I am a participant of Capacity Zurich program for high qualified refugees. So these policies are really designed to give the knowledge for refugees how to integrate into the local labor market. But then with the local labor market, here are much more obstacles. And this is the area where actually governments and other stakeholders should work more on recognizing their qualifications, these foreign qualifications, also streamlining work permits and other issues. Why I'm saying so? Because like the statistics speaks on its own. From Ukrainian refugees in Germany, only 16% work, in Switzerland 21%, and half of them work at lower qualification levels. So in UK the situation is better, 47%. But the language barrier was lower, and I would say that one of the best examples is probably Netherlands, where 65% of Ukrainian refugees already work. And Netherlands, by the way, they have the talent refugee hubs, which are working since 2016, and they connect refugees to employers. And then the next step is actually the social support networks, some platforms to provide a better integration. Italian example with their integration agreement program that is working since 2012 is quite successful and a good example. And the last important policy here is refugee resettlement, because it's important to avoid overpopulation of certain areas. And here a good example, I would say, the Canadian private sponsorship of refugees program, where sponsors fully assist selected refugees until they become self-sufficient. With that, as a summary, I would say that I have provided all the key recommendations focusing on both immediate relief and long-term economic stability. Those policies, they aim to provide comprehensive support to conflict-affected people, whether they remain in their home countries or decide to seek for a refuge abroad. But to conclude, I would like to draw your attention to the systemic issues that still exist, and in a multi-stakeholder approach we need to solve them, and therefore here I would like to give the conclusion also from my recent interview with Peter Maurer, the former president of ICRC, that actually developing those new approaches, we should combine both private and public funding and rely on the desire of refugees and fragile communities to take their destiny in their own hands. And then eventually we will see progress towards less political, economic and social disruption.